Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew, before we drop into today's episode, I wanted to make sure that you didn't miss out on getting signed up for Shine. This is my free 4-day guided journey to help you step into your authenticity and shine. It is running live Monday through Thursday beginning June 17th at noon Mountain Standard Time. Each day will be about 45 minutes and there will be prizes, and of course each day will be recorded. You can still win prizes even if you can't attend live, because it's important to me that everyone has equal access. I am so excited about this. When I ran Bloom back in the spring, it was so well received that I just couldn't wait to run another one. So don't miss out. Sign up today. Even if we've begun, you can catch the replays. The link is below. I hope to see your shining faces there. Hello, and welcome back, Woo Crew, to another week of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen of My Luminous Life, and I am here today with a wonderful guest. I am so excited to have Jana Stevenson on. Jana is an artist, which is good. That's a big label because she is multi-creative and multi-passionate. So Jana is a metalsmith and an author, and Magpie Ember is her company that combines all of her offerings. She creates modern talismans designed to anchor you into how you want to feel, with themes of self-love, acceptance, new beginnings, and embracing your inner magic in her collections. She is definitely witchy woo, and her jewelry is amazing. I have a piece on my finger. If you're watching the YouTube, you get to see it. There's a prompt to go check out the YouTube. And it's divine work. And then her books are also wonderful. If you've been around and a listener for a while, you'll remember that we read one of her books of Mates and Magic, I believe was the one. Is that the first one? Yeah, the first one. Yeah. Back a few months ago in the Patreon, but she writes witchy romance novels. You're going to describe it better. Anyways,
not by much.
Welcome, Jana. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. So we have lots to talk about today. I feel like it's going to be a really juicy conversation. But the way that I start with all of my guests is asking a little bit about your journey and your story into how you arrived here making magical jewelry and books, and the spiritual side of what led you here to be woo curious.
So I feel like the last couple of years for me have been kind of like a reawakening. I feel like as a kid, I always kind of leaned into the fantasy and the magic. I feel like I was very lucky in that my mom was super into fantasy and sci-fi, and so because she was in charge of all the things that we watched, I got to watch and take in a lot of that kind of media. And all the stories, all of my favorite stories were always sort of like fantasy and magical and fairy tales.
We have that in common.
Right? It's just like they're the best. They are the best stories. And I feel like I did that thing that grown-ups sometimes do, where I was like, I gotta sort of like tuck this aside and leave it alone. I can't be a grown up and like believe in magic and, you know, like want to be a fairy princess or like a powerful elf warrior, whatever.
Wizard.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's a time in our
Sorceress.
lives where we're just like, oh no, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to be a professional person and I'm going to wear like sharp pants and fancy shoes and whatever. But like, I never really did. Like I went to art school, which I loved, and I kind of never really looked back. I got accepted into a forensic anthropology program that I was very excited about because when I was a kid, I watched Jurassic Park and I was like, oh, okay, so obviously I need to have dinosaurs in my life. I'm going to become a paleontologist, and looked at that. And then
we have a lot of similarities, right? In our story. Yeah.
But always kind of like, I've always kind of leaned a little spooky. So I started looking at paleoanthropology. Bones have always been very interesting to me, like the structure and sort of like the you know, like just the way that bodies are all put together and the bones call to you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I feel like that,
yes,
that's always been a thing. And I feel like my artistic journey has fueled a lot of my budding spiritual practice now, because leaning into my own inner world has been the thing that I have kind of always done. Like I've always been an introvert, and it's always been like my internal world has always kind of been the one calling the shots, but it hasn't always felt safe to lean into it. And I went to art school and I leaned heavily into art school and all the weird shenanigans that you get into in art school. And it was so good and it was so fun. And I went away to more art school and I lived by myself. And it was really sort of like coming into my own a little bit. And that's where I went to Halifax and I did the jewelry and metalsmithing program out at NASCAD, the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. And I was there for 3 years, and it was incredible. It was the first time away from home. Well, that's not true. I lived alone, but it was my first time like out of the city, right? Like,
away from your home city.
Which was amazing. But being on my own and being able to sort of like, okay, like really dig into who I get to be and like try on all the different hats or whatever, it was very freeing, obviously. And we were there for 3 years, and my now husband, he came out there, and so it was just kind of like the two of us against the world and kind of like figuring out who we are together, which was really lovely. But once I got out of school, it was just like, oh, but now I have to be a grown-up and now I have to like do all the grown-up things. And so I did that for a long time. Like I worked in admin, and then I just made jewelry on the side because we had to pay the rent and, you know, grown-up stuff. And then we got married and we had a couple of kids, and it's like all of the stuff that we consume together too, but mostly me, is all still fantasy. Like like all of it, like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, all the stuff where it's like anything that's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, hugely formative. And so we did that for a long time, right? Like we were in Halifax for a few years, and then we were in Vancouver for a few years, and we both got jobs, and we've both been paying the bills, and then we got married and started, you know, like we had a couple of kids, and my husband went to grad school, and it was all very like, everything was centered on building this little family, which was wonderful, and it's what I wanted to do, and what, you know, like that was the path that we had chosen, and I was super happy to do it. But once the kids got a little bit bigger, I started to sort of like feel the pull to figure out who I am again. I think that's the journey for our whole lives, right? Like we're always figuring out who we are and what we're doing. I feel like I couldn't think of myself or live in my skin as an artist because I was a mother and I was a wife and I was doing all the things and like immersed in the minutia of the day-to-day life that we have, that we love. But when I get to talk into my studio and it's just me and I can listen to whatever it is that I want to listen to, I feel like that is when I can connect with the magic that is intrinsically in there. I feel very lucky that I have my own space, and I feel like for me the magic is in those quiet moments of creation, because I I feel like I am no longer just me. It's something else is fueling what is happening. And I find that so fascinating and so inspiring, because while it's nice to think that all of these brilliant ideas are just coming from me, sometimes I will make a thing and I'm just like, holy crap, like, where did this even come from? And I feel like for me, that is what the magic is. And I'm still practicing and learning how to get quiet, to feel that when I'm not at my bench or when I'm not working on something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do, yeah. Yeah, I think you're speaking to something that's so common among, I'm working through the Artist Way again right now, which for listeners who haven't done it, it's a 12-week program to unleash your inner artist, shall we say. And there's a lot of writing, but she talks about, being a channel for creativity. I recently finished Rick Rubin's whatever that book that he wrote was. Again, that whole idea of the artist really just being a conduit for some creative force. Big Magic by Liz Gilbert. The War of Art touches on that as well. So it's this commonality of being able to be present and be still and be quiet and let the work come through. That is such an interesting piece of any kind of creative act. And then bringing it out into the rest of your life. I love that you touched on that being a practice, because it's harder outside of the room that you get to close the door and shut the rest of the world out, to bring that practice into everyday life. Is there something that you find helpful in doing that? Or is there anything that you've noticed since you started practicing, trying to bring that woo or that magic out of the creation room?
So I have built in a morning practice that I find really sets the tone for the rest of my day, and it makes a huge difference for me. So I start every day with a very strong cup of tea, and I always take a deep breath, and I do the thing where I stir widdershins and then I stir clockwise, and I release something and I call something in. And it's usually the same things, because I feel I have a couple of goals that I'm working towards, so it always kind of applies. But that sort of first moment with the tea, where I'm getting it all set up, it feels like the first pause in a very busy stream of events. It's the pause before the start, I suppose.
Yeah, I like the way you said it. It feels like the first pause.
Right? Because throughout the day, I'm getting so much better at catching myself, like getting all in a tizzy or getting all into a frizz about something, and being able to be like, it's fine. Just take a deep breath. Like re-center. Don't come at this like a maniac. Bring her down. I feel like the kids and I often have this conversation where it's like, okay, let's just find some middle. And it's as much a reminder for me as it is for them as we head into the teen years.
Yeah.
Gracious.
Yeah. That's a whole nother ball game.
Giant toppers.
But it's so important, though, to find the anchor points. And that's, I think, with that morning practice, for myself, that's something I work with most of my clients with, is like crafting a morning routine or a sacred start. And I think you took my sacred start workshop back in January. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so simple. And it is the easiest time of day to build something little in, because you haven't gotten busy and distracted. And, the number of times I'm like, I'm going to exercise in the afternoon.
No, never. It never happens.
Never. You never do. So taking that time to have that first pause and make that intentional start to your day, it's also that act of noticing, right? And being really present, which is what so much of cultivating a more magical, abundant, joy-filled life is just remembering how to pause and notice, to come back into that space and pay attention, which again leads right into creativity, right?
I mean, sometimes I just
paying attention.
Oh yeah. I mean, yes. I feel like I get caught off guard a lot of times by the things that are inspiring to me. Like I feel like I'm often doing something else when a little like boop, a little spark will pop up. I'll be like, whoa, okay, I have like, there it is. I can see it. It's fully actualized in my brain, and I have to either find a piece of paper to write it down. Sometimes it is like the weirdest voice notes in my phone, like if I'm in the middle of a thing. Or sometimes I'll just be like, okay, like I'll just turn off the stove and I'll go and make it. Like there have definitely been times where I've been, it's usually during the day when I'm working on my own, but it's like I'll be doing something else and I'll be like, oh crap, that I have to do this first. And it's like, it just, I cannot bring my attention back to whatever task it was on hand until I have done something to acknowledge the new idea. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes I'll do it right away. Like there are days where I'm just like, no, everything else is on hold, and I'm going to just do this thing because I have to see if it's going to work. And then other times I will put it in a notebook and I'll come across it years later and be like, oh yeah, that thing. And now is the time when I have to make it. Like there are a couple of things that I'm working on now that I designed years ago where I'm just like, no, now's the time. Like these guys are ready to be in the world. And that's fascinating to me because they just hang out, right? Like they said hello ages ago. But now everything has kind of like coalesced into a point where it's like, yes, okay, everything that they need is now available. And then I can just like do it.
Right. Yeah. It's not surprising that ideas come to you when you're doing other things. Cause that's a lot like that. You know, we get our best ideas in the shower or while we're driving. Well, the conscious mind is otherwise, or kind of in those autopilot moments, right? Where our conscious mind is like, I'm bored, and the subconscious gets to kind of wander. I'm interested to know, or curious to know, if you had to learn to trust that the creation part would come in its own right timing. Like you said, you know, sometimes you just go and make it right now, and sometimes it's in a book. And was there a process of just learning to be like, it's going to get made when it's supposed to, and some of them aren't going to get made?
I feel like it wasn't ever really just a conscious moment. I think it is mostly, I'm going to be making lots of noise. It's mostly been I think it's like the ease that I feel in my skin now as I am getting older. And also all of the life experience of all of the things that I have done where I'm just like, that didn't happen then, but it happened later, so maybe. But yeah, I think that the last few years, particularly, as I have sort of like really sort of digging into like all of my unconscious programming and like all of the stuff that kind of sits hidden, lurking in the shadows that I never really gave a voice to before, or really even paid attention to before, and would just sort of like react in a way. Whereas now, because I have done some internal work and like really dug in a lot, I feel like it sits so much higher on the surface now, right? Like all the stuff that, like I can react to something, and like as I'm reacting, I'd be like, oh, that's why I'm reacting to this. I need to apologize right now, right? It's just like, there it is. Whereas I don't think 10 years ago I could have done that because I hadn't spent the time to get to know where those things were coming from. So that's been good.
Yeah.
For me now.
Yeah, that trust that comes with age, right? That trust that comes with age and experience is in some ways you can't replicate it. You can get there, or you can work on that earlier, but there is just a piece that is just getting older and being comfortable with the process.
Yes, totally. And I also feel like I am less afraid to just lean into the weird shit that I love now than I was when I was 20, right? Like everybody when they're 20 thinks that like, well, everybody is paying attention to you. Nobody is paying attention to you. Like nobody. So that's very
they're too wrapped up in their own shit.
Right? Like all of us are dealing with our own drama. And I feel like I am much more aware of my capabilities and my strengths and also the stuff that I'm just like, that is not about me, and that's fine. I don't have to even take any of that shit on. But holy smokes, I took all the stuff on when I was younger, right? It was just like, oh my gosh, like everybody else's feelings was all just like, well, definitely something that I did, so I'm just gonna do all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a learning curve for sure. I also feel like
it is. And
nope, you go.
Go
nope,
ahead.
no,
Sorry.
you do it. You take over.
Okay. I was going to say it is something that a lot of women kind of through their 30s into their 40s start to come up against is the conditioning, the programming, the good girl behavior, that people pleasing that so many of us were, well, all of us, if you're born in a female body in this society, you have dealt with this on some level or another. And most of us, it's quite a lot of that. We took on other people's feelings because we were told that that's what we had to do to be good. That's where our worth came from. Our value came from being of service. And so there's something that starts to shift as we approach that part of life where, you know, in the next 10, 15 years, our cronehood will probably come upon us.
Mine's already
and for
creeping in.
Yeah. For a lot of us, we've had our babies, and there's some empowerment there too. Like we've had our identity shift. I say we as if I've had babies. I have not, but the identity has shifted a couple times, and you've come out the other side and recognized that, well, like, I'm still here, and now I'm really powerful and important. Like, you're caring for whole humans, and that kind of I don't give a fuck attitude just comes more easily.
Yeah, I feel like there's still enough of the safety piece for me that I'm still working through, where I still give some fucks. I'm still just like, oh, they're in there still. But I'm able to push against that more, and I am aware of it, so I'm able to sort of meet that edge and be like, okay, yes, but I'm retreating, but also pushing, and it's definitely
giving fewer fucks.
Yes, yeah, the fucks are getting smaller.
they're getting smaller and less frequent.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I have one
it's an interesting
gin,
concept.
and there's zero fucks. I am fully embracing all of the ferocity because it doesn't take much.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. I've talked to you before. We did an Instagram live and we chatted a little bit about your process, but because probably most people listening here weren't privy to that live and don't want to go digging it back up out of my Instagram, I really love the story of how you fell into writing. And
that's a good one.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to tell that story of that first novel that landed.
So to take it back, I've always been a reader, always had my nose in a book. And usually it has been some sort of fantasy. And there's usually, I feel like I usually gravitate towards books where the main character is some sort of kick-ass babe where she's just she's gonna do the thing. She's gonna solve all the things. The chosen one is always Buffy, basically.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a kid, even before I knew what Buffy was. So always, always, always have read books and about women and just loved getting lost in the story. I love an escape. And in 2019, in January, we had this crazy blizzard. Everything got shut down because it was snow. We just got everything got snowed in. I feel like I'm talking really fast. I'm gonna put it down. And I got really sick, bronchitis, pink eye, something in my sinusitis. I had so many itises. The doctor laughed at me, and he was like, "You just go home. Here's these antibiotics. Go home." And I was like, "Okay."
Too many itises. Go to bed.
All of them. And a few months before, I had picked up a Kresley Cole novel out of a free library by our house. And Kresley Cole she's a paranormal queen. I had never read her before, but I picked up this book. I think it was A Hunger Like No Other. It looked hilarious. It just looked so cheesy and so bad. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just I'm in bed. I can't do anything for 3 days. I'm going to read this book and I'm just going to waste some time. Oh, no, I did not. It was fantastic. It was so good that I went back to the first book in the series and I read all of them. And I think there's something like 19 or 20 books in this series.
Oh, wow.
They were so good. And I deep dived so hard into romance novels that I still haven't really come out. And just kind of like got a little bit obsessed. So there's just always this like constantly churning romance novel in the back of my mind. And I hadn't ever really thought about it, but my husband a few times over the few years before I started doing it, he's like, why don't you just write your own? And I was like, no, never. And then
I'm not a writer.
Right? That's not my forte. But then one day, I want to say it was probably like September, because I was locking into market prep, because September through December is like the busiest market season for me and for a lot of artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm sitting at my bench and I was working away at something, and like a little snippet of dialogue kind of just like popped into my head, and I was like, oh, like no characters, just vibes. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna write this down. So I like scooched my chair over to my desk, because my workspace is all wood floors, and I just have a rolling chair, and I just like go from station to station basically.
Right.
So I scooched over from my bench.
Oh, I have it. That's a great visual.
Oh, it was like full,
it's like Belle,
yeah, it was like a cartoon
in the library.
Yeah. And I just like opened up a Pages document, because I didn't even know what I should be writing in, because I'd never done this before, and I just like clickety-clacked it out, and I was like, okay, I got it out. It's great. It's fine. I went back to my bench, went back to work, and I was like, I've got all the stuff I got to do. Great. So I'm working away, and it's like a couple of hours later, and the same characters popped into my head, only now it was a different scene, and it was spicy, and I was like, oh no, I have to write this down. So I scooched back over again, and I wrote out this a whole scene, and I was just like, that is funny, it's spicy and fun, and I was like I'm starting to get more of a, like, I was getting more of a picture of what and who they were, and sort of like what the connection was, and why it was so funny, and why there was tension. And I was like, oh no, maybe I'll just spend a little time in the mornings just like pulling these ideas together. So over the next couple of weeks, I got fully obsessed. Like, the story would not get out of my head. I couldn't really think about anything else, and everything else was happening on automatic, and I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. And I got, I want to say like, I don't know, 30,000 words into this book, where I was like, I'm just going to keep doing this and see what happens. Where I was like, okay, shit, I'm going to turn this into my craft exchange craft. So the backstory on this is that I have an annual craft exchange with some of like my best friends, and it's intense. And the only time in my life where I am competitive, my husband will attest to this, I'm terrible at competitive war games, in that I don't care. I got such a good reaction one year where I was like, oh no, I need to top that next year. What am I going to do next year? Oh. So then,
I'm like that with gift giving. I'm like, must be better than the last gift.
I just felt so good. It was like all the feel goods happened at once, because everyone was so excited about this thing, and I was like, oh shit, okay, this is a thing about me that I didn't know. So anyway, I'm just like, I'm going to make this my craft for this year. So I didn't tell anybody. I finished it. It was real rough and real ridiculous, and no editor saw it. I was just like, I'm just going to pull it all together, and I think this is amazing. It's going to be great. So I had 12 copies printed with just a local printer, so that I had gifts to give. And then we did a Zoom meeting, because it was in 2021, I think. So like we still were in lockdown.
Right.
And
yeah,
I got the reaction that I wanted. Everybody was like so excited, and I was so proud of myself, and like seeing like the finished book also, it became like a big art school project, which was so fueling for me. I fucking love an art school project, because it's like, here's the idea. You have to come up with all of the steps to get you to this finished product, and then I need the thing at the end. You need to show me the finished thing. And I was like, oh no, this is like pinging and checking off all of my boxes. This is so good. And the reactions that I got were so good, and I loved the book so much, because I had just like gotten so obsessed with it. And they were like, are you going to write more of this? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'll write more. Yeah, of course I did, because I couldn't stop. It was just like, it just kept coming. And then the second book happened, and I wrote the first draft of 3 books before I reached out to an editor. I sent her the first book, and I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's just like self-publish this and see what happens. I reached out to a lovely editor who I'm still working with, actually. I love her. And I was like, this is going to be great. She's going to read it. She's going to come back to me. She's going to be like, it's perfect. Just publish it. And, and then I got a 15-page report. Yes.
Document reports,
and I was like,
of all of the things.
This is real. All these feelings are so real. But the books just keep getting better because of that first feedback, right? Because she's like, no, here, and here, and expand this and work on this and think about this. And I was like, oh my God, yes. So all of these new skills that I'm still learning, I'm working on book 5 right now, and it's like every time I'm working on a rough draft, it keeps getting better and better. And I just feel like it still feels like such a gift to sit down and just have all of this stuff pop into my head and be like, well, I'm just going to spend the next 3 hours writing this out. We're just going to see where it goes. I'm not a plotter, turns out. There are different kinds of writers, and I am definitely a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants. Although, for the 4th book, I was like, let's build some structure. Let's see what this looks like if I arc out what happens first. So I did that.
Right.
But the characters still just want to do their own thing. I get into it. I right now, in fact, all morning I've been working on this 5th book, and it is still endlessly fascinating to me that the voices in my head are like, no, that's not what we're doing. I'm going to do this, and this is how I'm going to react to this. And now you have to change the whole external conflict. And I'm just like, what are we even talking about? We talked about this. We already have this all worked out. So it's it still feels like it, I don't even know what it is. It just feels so magical to me that I get to sit here and have a whole world come out of my brain. It's so weird and it's so amazing. And I love it so much.
I love that you love it. I love listening to you talk about it because your whole being just lights up with vibrancy.
It is the spark that is the fuel, right? I just feel like my whole... I feel like the way that I approach my work now as a body of work is that I recognize that I'm following a spark. I'm following an idea. It will flash, and it will be like a bright little ping of light or excitement or of an image or something, and I'm like, whoop, there it is. And I just have to I have to follow it, and I have to let my self get out of the way. You know what I mean? Sometimes it feels like that sometimes for me.
I just jotted that down. That's going to be the title of this episode. I never have a title before we're done recording. And follow the spark. Creativity is a magic practice. And it is, I think you're pointing at something so important here. And you just said, I have to get out of my own way, because so often where we lose the magic and the spark is, as you said, in that kind of early adulthood space, or sometimes even before, when we feel like we have to grow up and be serious. And we lose the spark, or we don't follow it, or we don't trust ourselves enough to follow it, or somebody else tells us that it's not worth following and it's not practical. And
you can't make any money being an artist. That can't be your job.
Right. Of course. And even if it's not artistry, maybe your spark is dentistry and your mom was like, you have to be a lawyer. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the spark is, because everything has magic. Some of us are creatives. Some of us are connectors and bring people together. Some people are neuroscientists and surgeons, and that's their spark. And it's a matter of feeling like you can follow it. And then if you forgotten to follow it, or forgotten how, or lost it somewhere along the way, I think that's what this podcast is really about. For me, when I started it, was this wanting to share that return to the spark, and to trusting, and to following the curiosity, and to, guiding yourself with compassion and letting yourself be right.
Because it feels so good when you just let yourself find out where that's going to go. Right? Even if it's just the littlest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to become a vocation or a career too. You could have your 9 to 5 that feels really supportive. Like you said, you enjoyed your time in admin. and you create it on the side. And for some people that's going to be enough, but so many people will stuff down those sparks
my gosh,
and ignore them and get
yes.
into the rut and the routine of just the hustle and the busy and the like the kids got to get to here and the kitchen's a mess and I have to make sure everything's perfect before I can slow down and follow that joy.
My kitchen is a hot mess because my spark is upstairs.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. You really are, embodying so much of what I'm trying to embody and to help teach in the world too, that life is for living.
Oh my gosh.
Life is for the spark.
Gosh. Yeah. The last couple of years,
life is not for dishes.
Particularly have really highlighted just how valuable every moment is for us. We've had a couple of people really close to us in the last couple of years get really sick, and we've lost a few people, and it's just been like, it really just clarifies so much for me, especially just that like I want to be around for my kids, and I feel like what I'm doing right now, and my husband too at first, like I want us to all be around and together, and I feel so lucky that I have been able to work from home while my kids have been small, and that I am building this new body of work. And like the website still isn't new. It's still all the old stuff is still there. But like I'm building this new thing so that I can stay home and be around for when they, you know what I mean? Because they're only little for a little while, and I'm not going to cry. But it's like, it's a cliche because it's true, right? Like all of these little moments make up a whole life. And I just feel like I am very grateful that I get to spend my time digging into this creativity and letting it go where it's going to go. And also that we live in a time where I can have a website where I can be like, oh, you want a little cute thing? It's somewhere I'll just send you to this thing. And like people can, you know what I mean? Like it could potentially just be my job. Which is the plan.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is wild, the world that we live in. And you're so right that piece, that presence it's the biggest gift we can give to ourselves, to the people in our lives. And obviously neither of us are discounting the fact that bills need to get paid. Like that's a reality, because if you don't pay them, well, then you won't eat and you won't have electricity or a home. And those things are important for survival. Yeah. And our culture overemphasizes, I was thinking about this the other day, how the goal and the dream of things like abundance is such a like buzzword in the world of coaching and entrepreneurship. And it's been tied in our mind's eye through capitalism and even through, the influencers and the people on Instagram. That abundance has to equal lots of things and new things and shiny things and first-class flights. And like, I'm a fan of first-class flights, don't get me wrong, but does it enrich my life? Do I need the latest gadget, or do I just feel like I do? And we get so caught up in this like need for more instead of being able to sink back into the gratitude of what we do have and the enjoyment of the free magic that's all around.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do I want to ask? I would love to hear if you have any words of wisdom for people who might be wanting to write or wanting to create art or anything. Like, is there something that you would tell them if they're at the outset of their journey or deciding whether to try?
I honestly, it's like the pithiest, most ridiculous statement, but just fucking do it. Just like try a thing. Like you will probably not be great at it at first, right? Or you might also not be great at it at all. But if you love it, if it brings your body like visions of joy, then do that thing, right? Like I have embraced making shiny things and writing kissing books because it makes me feel very good. I love it. And it makes me nicer to be around when I get to spend time doing things that I love to do because it lights me up and it like creates more of that positive energy. And then my kids get to see me doing the stuff that I love, and they get to see me making a life through the stuff that I love, and they get to see that they could do that too, which is incredible to me. And like, maybe you really love, I don't know, making crepes. Maybe crepes is like a thing that you love. And so every Sunday morning you build in this beautiful ritual where you make crepes and you fill them with all of the delight in your heart. And you're just like, fuck yeah, that's it. My Sunday is perfect now. Right? Like that is following that magic, right? Yeah, like foster kittens, right? Like whatever it is that makes you feel good, why not do that thing? Right? I just, yeah. I also feel like I am very lucky in that I sit in a place where I can say that and that I can do that, and I acknowledge that that's not everybody's story or real life experience.
But again, finding the little ways to weave it in, right? You don't have to abandon your job to create. And I think what you said there is the most important nugget out of that is that ripple effect that it has. That it makes you a better person. So often when we think about doing things like that, like pursuing a passion or creativity or doing things for ourselves, it feels selfish. Again, especially if we inhabit a female body or are present as a female in the society, like it feels selfish to take care of our own needs. And it's not until we start to live into it and recognize how much of a positive impact that it has on everybody around us when we take the time to pursue our passions, to follow our sparks, that we can really understand and embrace the fact that it's like the opposite of selfish. Not only are you creating something that is beautiful and goes out into the world and makes somebody else happy, but you're also making yourself more enjoyable to be around and a positive role model and like all of those things, right? Your friends and family benefit as well as the people who get to consume your art if your art is of a consumption nature.
Totally.
Yeah. So I know that you are in the middle of a rebrand as we speak. By the time this airs, it might be all live. And I know that you have another book coming out, and I know that you have an event in July. So let's wrap this up a little bit by just like letting us know, let the listeners know what you've got coming up, how they can find you and your beautiful jewels and your amazing books and all of the things. I say it because I love it. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, tell them all the things.
So the rebrand is so everything is becoming Magpie and Ember. So currently my jewelry brand is Jana, and I've been doing the markets here in Victoria, BC for the last 20 years under that moniker. Moving forward, hopefully by the time I am at the Artistry Festival in July, I think it's the 26th, 27th, it's going to be beautiful. It's at the Government House Gardens. It's a 2-day event. I will be there as Magpie and Ember, which is the culmination of all of the things that I love to do. And you will find the jewelry there. I am narrowing down the collection, so I'm leaning into my spooky roots. So a lot of the more sort of like cute and spooky, pretty and witchy things will be available. The Serpent sisters are a big favorite of mine. I keep coming back to them they're so good. They're so good. I love them. So I will be at Artistry in July, and I am planning to release the 5th book in my series as so Maggie Francis is my pen name, and I'm planning to release the 5th book in the series called His Devil May Care in September, hopefully for the solstice. That's my plan, and I'm very excited about that. If you are local to Victoria, you can buy paperbacks. You can get them for me always, and I will always add swag. But you can buy copies of the paperback at Bolden Books and at Monroe's Books in town if you're local. And then moving into the fall, because already I'm starting to think about market season, I'm doing the Halloween market in October, which I'm very excited about. And then Winter Bazaar and I haven't applied yet, but I will intend to apply to the Owl as well, which is always a super fun time. So those are local events coming up. And if you are local to Victoria, the Fernwood Makers Party does an excellent summer series, the Summer Night Markets. I haven't seen if they're running them again this summer, but if they do, I will 100% apply to those as well, because they do such a fantastic job of bringing so many beautiful people together.
Amazing. Yeah. And people can read all your books on Kindle, right?
Thank
Kindle
you.
Unlimited.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Hire you for my marketing. All of the ebooks, the whole
available.
series is available to read for free if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. So you can pick up the whole series, starting with book 1, which is a novella length film called Of Mates and Magic. And the whole vibe of the book series is like if Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Gilmore Girls had a sexy love child. That is what this series feels like. It's fun and it's lighthearted and it's sexy and ridiculous and
it's delightful. That first book is like you can crush.
Oh yeah, it's a lovely little gateway
read.
It's
great.
The world that is my brain. Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on with me today. It was so lovely to have you and to chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna do my little wrap-up spiel, and I'll hit stop, and then we can chat for a couple of minutes. But so thank you so much for tuning in, Woo Crew. It was a pleasure to have you listening. I'm so glad that you were able to hear a little bit about Jana and her magic and finding your spark. And maybe this episode will have inspired you to go out and pick up a pen or some clay or whatever creative outlet is calling your name. As usual, if you like this episode, please go ahead and give it a 5-star review and leave a rating if you're on Apple Podcasts. They really, really help get this podcast found. Share it with your friends, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.